Well, I just hope this story doesn't go off the rails and brings in some guys with some very pointy hoods. This week, we opened on some rather bleak-looking skies, complete with some creepy singing, house on fire, and an actually intimidating witch of procrastinations. And all of this put against the beautiful backdrop of a small European town burning to the ground. Have I mentioned yet that this was another episode written by Hiroyuki Yoshino? Yeah, I'm just surprised at you that there haven't been more tonal shifts up until now. This was all a vision Manatsu was seeing from the perspective of the legendary Cure. However, before she could explain this potentially massive plot point to her fish waifu, they got a call from the Grand Ocean Queen. And after the opening, I guess kind of spoiled the big twist of the Heartcatch crossover film of Elsa turning out to be an antagonist. Called it! Laura and Manatsu explained to the rest of their team that Queenie wanted to see them. Apparently, the Grand Ocean just kind of restored itself since the last time we saw it, and as far as our heroines knew, none of their actions had done anything to really help it, but hey, I'm sure that doesn't require any sort of further questioning whatsoever.
You'll be sorry!
Thus, they decided to pay the Discount Atlantis a visit on their next day off. And aside from a messy transition from the land to the sea, the journey to the Grand Ocean was actually pretty interesting, with it being at the very bottom depths of the ocean, with Whirlpool as its last line of defense. But our heroines managed to get through it thanks to... I'm sorry, but, what? Yeah, a little weird to have the little sea mammal prove to be useful now of all times. I mean, okay, I don't think Kurun opened a portal with any power of its own. It was probably like some kind of voice-activated security system that could only be accessed by a creature that could talk underwater, but still a little bit of a surprise coming from this very underutilized mascot. But whatever, they arrived in the kingdom. And I gotta say, I really like the BGM here. Yeah, we really haven't talked that much about Shiho Terada's contributions to the series so far, but I gotta say, I think the Grand Ocean's theme worked really well here to get across the feelings of wonder and astonishment from our heroines, while also having an undercurrent of uneasiness from how overly pleasant it all was. Yeah, sure, it was a good character moment for Laura, showing how much she loved her home kingdom, but maybe y'all should be questioning why things are so damn nice. Anyway, they entered the castle untransformed thanks to some special underwater lipstick. Well, that, and as I recall, makeup isn't allowed at your school. Even though they hardly reinforced that rule, because I guess it would kind of get in the way of your little side hustle, wouldn't it? And after introducing themselves to the queen, who of course didn't have a real name because royals can't have junk like that unless they actually become a Precure themselves, they were praised by her and her rather gaudy looking nails. And after they ate a huge feast, which considering a later twist in this episode has some interesting implications, they were told about their next toy, MacGuffin, very important item that they needed to find called the Ocean Ring. Apparently, it would react to its sister ring in the land ring, so they went out looking for it while Kurun hung around the castle. During their search, they found bubble flowers that I guess could be ground into the flour used to make Kurun's shell cookies. So wait, you've been feeding that seal cookies that smell and taste like perfume or soap? Yeah, I'm gonna have to disagree with y'all on that one. I mean, okay, putting aside unpleasant memories of accidentally drinking soap, this was all good lore and world building, making the Grand Ocean really feel like an actual lived-in place after we've learned so little about it for almost the entire season. Yeah, it is a little late for that stuff, which I will consider my overall thoughts for the series, but at least it was something. Hell, we even managed to learn where baby mermaids came from. Manatsu would also take this time to explain her vision to her friends, which I guess would become more important later, as they had other things to worry about once they got back to the castle, and Laura finally realized things were a little off when Queenie didn't seem to care about her precious pet and accused her of being a fraud while also doing the Spider-Man hand gesture.
Go Web, go!
I don't know, maybe an actual pointing finger has already been trademarked by a certain little detective. Sure enough, the wizard behind the curtain turned out to be Numeri, having been exposed by Kurun, who also discovered Chongie, who, yeah, I guess was the one who made all that delicious food for his enemies. Well, points for professionalism, but all of that appreciation was then negated when they found the real queen, who was... Put those pencils down, Rule 34s! But yeah, they found the compromised queen, as well as a bunch of Grand Ocean residents, hooked up to a Lotus Eater machine that was essentially mind-aping them in order to project false images of a peaceful world. In fact, looking at the background, it looks like they also needed to switch out victims to keep up the illusion. Okay, now this is really starting to feel like a Yoshino script. Our heroines transformed, and for whatever reason, they didn't use Laura's first transformation into La Mer, which went from mermaid to Precure. I don't know, maybe it was a timing issue, and they engaged a slightly different type of Yaneda. Oh, so this is what happens when Squidward really loses it.
You call yourselves good neighbors? You're the worst neighbors!
But yeah, in an interesting twist, the villains could have used living creatures as targets as opposed to inanimate objects this whole time, but didn't because they would be too strong and hard to control. Well, that, and they needed another reason to make all the previous finishers obsolete.
What a surprise.
My cynicism aside, this was a decent fight to get across the strength of this new monster type, and it probably will be better than next week's Hi Aoyama. Anyway, the Precure had pretty much used up all of their ammo, allowing Squidward to... I said pencils down! Why bother? I can't stop them at this point. All the while, the villains actually talked like villains for once and called out our heroines on their admittedly foolish optimism in believing that the Grand Ocean was back. Still, this just ended up egging them on, and their determination awoke the Ocean Ring, but even this was all according to Keikaku, as Butler was just waiting to snatch it up. God, isn't it nice when we actually have competent villains? Though one thing I don't think he counted on was the Grand Ocean's dome cracking during their fight, and I guess letting in real seawater. Yeah, I guess they were swimming in magical water this whole time, but whatever, cliffhanger for next week. Knowing that this was going to be a plot-relevant episode, I was a little surprised to learn that Yoshino was writing it as opposed to the show's actual head writer, but honestly, I'm glad he did, because this episode just had some great twists and turns that has really kind of been missing from his episodes up until now. While I do understand why the season has been overall on the lighter side, I have also been craving some amount of stake racing to occur, which thankfully the showrunner of Book of Circus was willing to give us, along with some much needed world building. In general, I just really hope this franchise lets more secondary writers really stretch their creative muscles if they can give us more episodes like this. 90% illusion or not, actually seeing more of the Grand Ocean has been a long time coming. Again, it is a little frustrating that we had to wait until what's likely the final core of the series for this stuff, but still, at least they delivered for the most part. Seeing Laura marvel at her quote-unquote restored kingdom really helps to put in perspective what our heroines are fighting for. This was only furthered when we got to see what became of the actual residents of the kingdom. And while not exactly explicit, as they did kind of gloss over it, this is still pretty dark stuff if you relate this machine to stuff like The Matrix or the prisons from Minority Report, which, knowing Hiroyuki Yoshino's taste, I'd imagine he wanted to include this stuff for the longest time. All of this, plus Manatsu's visions of the legendary cure, really helped to shift the tone into more serious waters without necessarily being too drastic. And forced finisher obsolescence aside, it is nice to have the villains feel like an actual threat again, who could also point out the naivete of our heroines. So, overall, this was a great and very much needed world-building episode as we near the 11th hour of this series. If Yoshino can bring in some more subtly dark ideas like this into the next series, I'll look forward to his episodes rather than just wait on the next Code Geass. surprisingly enough, I think we'll be able to get the first part of the Symphogear XV review out in maybe just a few more days. Again, I think it really helps that we chose to do it in 3 parts this time. Yeah, it means there's going to be less episodes covered per part, but there's also a lot of behind the scenes stuff that I think needs to be shared with all of you, so do look forward to that. And until then though, farewell for now my friends, and oh no, I'm not gonna participate in some stupid rhythm game.